to make these cookies, you're going to need the aqua or teal colored royal icing, and I've got it in my piping bag with a number 3 tip. I have a Food Writer Americolor pen, so it's an edible pen, and I have the round cookie cutters with a scalloped edge, and I made this cookie using this size cookie cutter, and I recently learned a trick that actually really helped me with circles because I'm not very good at piping a good circle freehand. So you put your cookie cutter on top of your cookie, press down a little bit so it creates an impression so you can kind of see the line. Remove your cookie cutter, brush off a little bit of the crumbs, and you can take your food writer and go in, just basically outline where the circle or the impression is from the cookie cutter. And now I have a line that I can trace. So this is a way you can do it without a coffee cake projector. I often use the projector, so this is just one step that I don't have to do, but if you don't have the projector, it's a great option. So then you take your royal icing, and I always wipe my tip first. And I start it in one area, and I let the icing catch. And then I'm going to go a little bit outside of the color that I just created because I don't want to see it. And I just let the icing fall. Go all the way around. And when you get closer to the edge where you're almost done, you stop pressing and just bring the icing closer to the center. Now if you're not happy with a little spot, you can take a toothpick, or you can actually take the piping bag itself and just push it, or when you're actually filling it in, my hand is really shaky, you can probably see, so I have to rest it on the table, but since the icing is pretty thin, it'll flow and you won't see all the shakiness. So I go close to the outline when I'm filling in, and then you can go zigzag or spiral, whatever works. For the consistency of the icing, which is really important, I have another video that you can check out. So you can see the icing's a little bit thick. So what I do now is I shake the cookie to help it merge. Turn it a little bit. And now what you need to do is let it dry for 24 hours if you really want to make sure it's dry so that no bleeding happens. Okay, once your cookie is dry, you can start the next part of the decoration, which is adding the white dots. And I'm using a number 2 tip with flood icing that's somewhat runny. And I'm basically just pressing the piping bag enough to let a dot out, and then releasing and letting go. And because the icing is so runny, the dot just sort of falls back in place and no tip is created. If, for example, there was a tip and the icing is a bit too thick, you could use a toothpick to press it down. And you want to actually let that icing, or the teal color, the darker color, dry. I do for 24 hours. I find that this icing kind of seals the cookie in so it doesn't dry out. And the reason why I let it dry is so that when you add your next color, it doesn't bleed. So if this was still kind of wet, while the white icing was drying, the two colors would bleed together. So that's it. Go all the way around until you're done. Now while this teal or aqua part is drying, I basically made a royal icing transfer, which is basically royal icing, so that while this was drying as well, so they'd be ready at the same time and I could just put it on top. So it's a faster way of making a cookie. Plus, if you make a mistake, then you don't have to worry as much because you've got a separate piece. So what I did was I bought these at Walmart. I just found a simple daisy shape that I liked, and then I outlined it a little bit more in a darker color so I could see it with the projector. And I'll show you in a second what I did with that. But first what you're going to need is a transparency sheet. So I basically just have transparency sheet from your local business depot or office supply store. And what I do is I took a little bit of shortening like Crisco or Tender Flake, put it on a paper towel, and smear it a light thin layer onto the sheet. So a lot of people wonder, but won't that wreck the royal icing? It actually doesn't in this case. The icing just sits on top of it and dries, and it helps it come off the sheet later. Okay, so now I'm ready to use the copy cake projector. So this is the projector, and it's got the image projecting. I don't really need this green one. I've got a darker outline here on the orange, and I've got a white piece of paper underneath to make the contrast darker so I can see the image better. And now I'm just going to use my number 2 tip and white piping icing to make this shape. So you just start at a corner and you just let the icing catch. I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually also, I'm piping this onto the transparency sheet that I showed you. And my hand's again really shaky, so I rest it on the table. And honestly, one of my biggest tips is just to let your icing fall into place, and it'll be a lot smoother and actually easier to control. And my second biggest tip is probably the consistency of the icing. So I've got another video if you want to check it out on how to find the right consistency for decorating. So once you have your outline, some people like to let it dry, and sometimes I do as well, depending on the look. But for this one, I'm going to fill it in right away. I'm going to go really close to the border first. So if your icing was too runny, it wouldn't really hold its shape at this point. And if it was too thick, it wouldn't flow nicely. Now I'm trying to work quickly too, because it does dry fairly quickly. And then you're just filling it in. Go back and fill in the little spots. And you may need to shake it a little bit just to help the icing smooth over. And that's it. I'm going to let this dry for at least 6 to 12 hours. Okay, now that I've let this dry, I'll just pick it up. Oops, there you go. Pick it up, and I'm actually going to try and gently just peel the acetate paper, or the transparency paper, away from it, and it'll pop right off. Okay, to do my center, I need my yellow royal icing fitted with a number 3 tip, and then I'm just going to create a dot in the center. I've got my sanding sugar ready. All I have to do is shake some on top so it sticks to it while it's wet. And then very gently I can shake the excess back in. And there you go. Okay, so now that everything is dry, I'll take my royal icing transfer, and you have to work with these really, really gently because they do break easily. And I'm just going to put some icing on the petals, just a little bit. Royal icing dries kind of like glue. I don't want too much to kind of squish through the sides. So I'll put my icing on, and then really gently place it onto your cookie. And then I'm done. And for this cookie, I just reversed the colors. So hope you enjoyed this video. Have fun decorating!